So I've never made a video like this before, but I felt like something like this needed to be made because just recently throughout like the media and everything and seeing people's Facebooks and all other social medias, that suicide is more prevalent today in our society than it ever has been. Yesterday, we just lost two amazing people. One of whom, Anthony Bourdain, who, being a girl who went to culinary school, to the school he actually went to, and seeing all of the things that he accomplished, he inspired me. He inspired me to be a better chef than I was when I first started. He inspired me to just say, screw it, and just go with it, because that's how you live your life. That's how you get those memorable experiences. And to know that he felt like he had no way out, it hurts. It really, truly hurts. And it's not just celebrities, because all you hear about is celebrities. A celebrity commits suicide, and you hear about it because they're in the media, and people go, whoa, they had millions of dollars, and they traveled, and they had a great career, and they had all this family and all these people that loved them. How could they do this? How could they feel that there was no way out? Well, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter what kind of career you have. It's depression. It happens. It's a disease. You could have millions and millions of dollars. You could be the biggest celebrity in the world, and you could still feel like you had no other choice, that you had no way out, because that's what depression does. It attacks your very self-being. It attacks everything that you think and do. You don't have to be rich. You could be poor. You could be well off. You could be happily married. You could have your own house. Your life could be in order, or you could have a terrible life. You could be living on the street. You could be in an abusive relationship. It doesn't matter who you are, you can be depressed, and it's okay to talk about it, because that's how you get help. And there's people out there that want to help you. And it breaks my heart knowing that people don't know that. And I'm a victim of that as well. I have depression. I've been depressed since I was 13 years old. I've heard, oh, just get over it. Oh, it's not a big deal. Just stop being sad. Why don't you smile a little bit more? I've heard all that. But it's easier said than done. And I just want to read you guys something that I wrote about depression when I was in one of my lowest points. And it's a little bit of my story, and it's a little bit of everyone's story who is struggling with depression, who thinks that there is no way out. And it starts out with the lyrics to one of my favorite 21 Pilots song called Attic with a Pen. It's the best way I've ever heard anyone describe depression. It says, I try desperately to run through the sand as I hold the water in the palm of my hand, because it's all that I have and it's all that I need. The waves of the water mean nothing to me, but I try my best in all that I can to hold tightly onto what's left in my hand. But no matter how tightly I will strain, the sand will slow me down and the water will drain. The moment I heard these lyrics, I teared up. I got goosebumps all over my body, and a chill went down my spine, and it was like a light bulb had gone off. That was it. It was an aha moment. Those are the exact words I have been looking for years to describe one thing: depression. If you have ever experienced depression, then you know what I'm talking about. Everyone always asks, well, what does it feel like? Why are you so sad? Let's go back to the lyrics I spoke about before. Everyone has held water in their hands before. You cup your hands together and scoop up the water, but what happens? The water will always drip slowly out of your hand. To someone who has depression, the water in this equation is hope. Hope is a very fickle thing with someone who suffers from depression. It's very hard to hold on to because you don't feel like you deserve anything at all. Slowly every day, you lose hope if you let depression take a hold of you and you don't fight back. Just like the water slowly dripping out of your hand. No matter how tightly you try to hold your hands together, there is something always holding you back. That's where the sand comes in. Have you ever gone to the beach and tried to run through the loose sand at the beginning? It's hard, right? It slows you down and makes you stumble. The sand is your own mind holding you back. It is the doubt you carry everywhere with you, constantly questioning if you're good enough, if you're smart enough, if you're skinny enough, if you're strong enough, if you're pretty enough. Constant self-doubting that is so heavy you feel like no matter how hard you try to run from it, you barely make it. Now just imagine trying to run through the sand holding the water in your hand without it spilling over. It's almost an impossible task. It's what depression feels like. Even the simplest things in life, like getting out of bed, going to work, being social, or just going to the store, can be the sand that's in your life holding you back. The waves of the water he speaks about is life itself. Now you're at the beach again, and at first you're excited. You look out and you see the waves crashing against the shore. You see the sun sparkling against the water, and it's beautiful. You can't wait to make it to the water and dive right in. But as you start trying to run through the sand, you start to lose hope that you're going to actually make it to the water. You start not caring about it anymore. You can hear and see the waves, but all of that is secondary in your mind. You are only focusing on the sand at that moment that is constantly hindering you and holding you back. You've abandoned all of your earlier wishes and dreams of diving into the ocean and swimming in the waves. Your main focus is the sand. It's a terrible, sinking feeling, and you don't even realize that you've abandoned those dreams until it's too late. Till the sun has gone down and it's time to go home at the end of the day. That is how depression feels. Now, how do I know this? I mentioned it before. I have depression. I've struggled with depression since I was a kid. I was officially diagnosed when I was 13 years old. But when I went back further than that, I thought, I had a pretty rough life. No one would know it, though, except for the people who were really close with me. He looked at my life from the outside. I had a happy life. I was a cheerleader, I was popular, I had a lot of friends, I was social and talkative and was always smiling and laughing. My mom still jokes to this day that I can never shut up. I seemed happy to everyone around me, including my family, until I was behind closed doors, and I fell apart. Back then, especially when I was 13, I had constant thoughts of suicide rolling in my head. I used to write poems, and during that time, most of them were about the darkness, the sinking feeling, the loneliness, and death. I saw it as a release, but now I know that it wouldn't have been. That's how my mom found out that I was depressed. She found my poems. She found them and she took them to the doctor, and I got help. But there are many things that contributed to my depression, though, and I didn't realize it until I was older. My parents got divorced when I was 3 years old. After my dad left, I didn't see him really at all until I was around 7 or 8. It could have been earlier than that, but I don't really remember. But at that time, I hated him. I hated the fact that he not only left my mom, but he left me and my sister as well. I felt abandoned by him. Even after I started going to his house every other weekend, I still didn't see him. It wasn't until years later, when I was older, and I could understand why. Because he was working so much to support not only himself, but my stepmom and step-siblings, as well as child support for me and my sister. He had no choice but to work so much. He didn't abandon me like I had thought, but back then I thought he had. During that time, my mom got remarried. It wasn't long after my dad left that this man had moved in. So being so young, I didn't know what to call him, so he told me to call him Dad. Looking back at it now, I would have never called him that, because even though he was my stepfather, he was not my dad, and he never would be. He was abusive. It started out with just screaming and yelling, but sometimes it turned physical. The woods outside of my house became my safe space when I could be there. My closet became my safe space when I couldn't. I was 6 years old the first time he screamed in my face that he hated me, that I would never amount to anything, that I was useless and worthless. Those words stuck to me like glue throughout my life. During that time was when my depression set in. For someone who's supposed to be a father figure in your life to say something like that to you when you're so young, you start to believe them, because how could they be wrong? Those are the people you look up to, the people that are supposed to help you through life. Being so young, how could you believe anything else? Now I remember those moments. I remember how bad they were, but there are some things that I can't remember. There are things that are speculated by my family that happened to me that my mind has blocked out, but they still affect me. I still have random panic attacks for no reason, and then when I look at them, I notice the signs that may have triggered them. All of these things have contributed to my depression, but now here's where people get confused. Like I said before, not everyone who is depressed has had a hard life. I know people who have depression who have amazing lives, yet they're still depressed. I'll tell you one thing that my best friend told me, something that has always and will always stick with me. You cannot compare suffering. Just because something isn't a big deal to me doesn't mean that it's not a big deal to someone else. Suffering is suffering no matter who is going through it. The people who I thought had an amazing life could actually have just as bad a life as mine. They could be struggling with things I don't know about. Just because you see a smile and you hear a laugh doesn't mean they're not falling apart behind it. This year they released the statistics for depression. They found out that 350 million people worldwide suffer from depression. That's 5% of the entire population. 1 in 5 adults in the U.S. have a mental health condition. That's over 40 million Americans. More than the population of New York and Florida combined. Rates of youth with severe depression increased from 5.9% in 2012 to 8.2% in 2015. But even still, 76% of youth are left with little to no sufficient treatment. 2 out of 3 people will stay silent about their disorder in fear of being persecuted. 56% of Americans with a mental illness do not receive treatment. The main reason for this is there's a shortage of providers and insurance that offer treatment. Suicide is at such an all-time high rate right now, and no one is doing anything about it. Why? Because no one wants to talk about depression. No one wants to talk about mental illness because it's taboo still. No one wants to face the fact that people are depressed. As Jack Harris, a YouTube personality, put it, when we break our arm, everyone runs to sign the cast. But when we say we have depression, everyone runs the other way. Why are we ignoring something that is killing people? On average, there are 123 suicides per day. That is 44,965 people each year. For every suicide, 25 will attempt it. That is 1,124,125 people every year that attempt suicide. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. It costs the U.S. up to $69 billion annually. So why are we ignoring it? Why aren't we talking about it more? Why aren't we raising awareness and helping people? We should be telling people that it's okay. It's okay to search and to receive help. You shouldn't be embarrassed about it. We should be wanting to help people. We should talk about it more. We need to open these discussions. We need to show people that they can seek treatment and that there is treatment out there. We need to get more treatment to the places that don't have it. We should be saving lives.